Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Tulsi Devi 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 Tulsi Devi Tulsi Devi Jaya Tulsi Devi Vrinayai Tulsi Devi Priyai Hai Keshavasya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Jai Namo Namaha Vrinayai Tulsi Devi Priyai Hai Keshavasya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavajaya Namo Namaha Vrinai Hai Tulsi Devi Jai Hai Satyavajaya
Yeah, Nietzsche is fine now at this point. She's Nietzsche is fine now with it. She said she said in Alachua they have his picture on the Vyasasana. His picture on the Vyasasana in Alachua. to do 2 verses, 48 and 49. Yeah. Yep. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvrajikacharya Asatara Satyashishi Mada Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Shri Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Jai Mukunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dhamma Ki Jai, Mathura Dhamma Ki Jai, Navadvip Mayapur Dhamma Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dhamma Ki Jai, Gangamaya Jamuna Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharne Nirvisesis Nirvani Paskatyade Satarane. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Scha Vanchakalpachuvascha Kripasandavya Bhatapatitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevi Namo Namaha. So I'd like to dedicate today's class to my grandson Chakra, who right now is in the ICU after a terrible road accident and who may not survive or may be severely brain damaged. if everybody could please pray for his full healing. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So it's January 23rd, 2023 in Hillsborough, and we're going to be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 41. We're going to read texts 48 and 49. We'll start with 48. Tavagnapaya tambrityam kim aham karavanivam pumso twanugraho yesha bhavadbiryan yidujyate. Please chant. Kim aham karavamivam pumso twanugraho yesha bhavadbiryan yujite tavagyapaya tambrityam kim aham karavanivam pumso tanugraho yesha bhavadbiryan yujite tavagnapaya tambrityam kim aham karavanivam pumso tanugraho yesha bhavadbiryan yujite. Tau, they, agnapayatam, should please order, brityam, their servant, kim, what, aham, I, karavani, should do, vam, for you, pumsaha, for any person, ati, extreme, anugraha, mercy, he, indeed, eshaha, this, bhavadbihi, by you, yat, in which, niyujyate, he is engaged. BBT translation. Please order me, your servant, to do whatever you wish. This is the florist talking to Krishna and Balaram. To be engaged by you in some service is certainly a great blessing for anyone. There's no BBT purport. We will read the commentary by Sanatan, which is practically the same as Jiva's. The two are devoid of prejudice, which was the discussion of the previous verse. And then he's saying, Krishna may say, then follow my order in the form of the Vedas. And the florist may say, what can I do for you two who have come to me directly? And Krishna would say, without my ordering you, you performed your duty of welcoming us as a guest. And the florist would say, to be engaged by you is the greatest mercy. This is the greatest mercy for the jiva pumsa. The plural is used in bhavadibhi to include Krishna's associates as well. He expresses, I desire to do some service for you. So I'm going to go on to the service that he does. So text 49. Ityabi pretya Rajendra Sudama Pritya Manasa Shastai Su Gandhai Kushumar Mala Virat Chitad Dadao. Sukadev Goswami continued, O best of kings, having spoken these words, Sudama could understand what Krishna and Balaram wanted. Thus, with great pleasure, he presented them with garlands of fresh, fragrant flowers. So Sanatana Goswami and Jiva Goswami is the same commentary. Their commentary on this is because of shyness, Krishna and Balaram did not directly say they wanted the garlands. But since they came to the house of a garland maker, he understood their desire by Krishna's glance at an unfinished garland. So this is the first-class servant, right? First-class servant understands what the master wants without the master having to directly say anything. Of course, that's risky. If you're not sure, better to ask. O king, such a garland is rare even for a king. Or, the word Rajendra in the verse indicates that the garland maker was most fortunate like a king. The garland was endowed with good color, softness, and other qualities, or was auspicious because of its qualities. He gave garlands which were suitable for the lords, vi rachitam, better than previous garlands suitable for kings. He gave Krishna one such garland and gave others as well. The garland was superior to previous garlands. Another version has virachita. He gave garlands which had been made by his family to the two boys who came suddenly. He gave garlands which had been made quickly for worship. Otherwise, the word virachita would be meaningless in this verse. He gave with great pleasure. Vishnu Purana says, with a smiling face, with great greed, he gave the two boys beautiful flowers. So this is greed for service, not like greed for money. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur has a really interesting commentary. Krishna said, O Sudama, do whatever you think is right. That is my order. It will be very good if you do that. Sudama understood Krishna's command by realizing, I must give them garlands because I'm a garland maker. Then he gave an excellent, extremely fragrant garland, which was made of attractive, soft, fresh flowers. The singular word mala, garland, is used to indicate that although Sudama gave two garlands, one to each brother, he secretly gave one most beautiful garland to Krishna. Yapi pretya Rajendra Sudama prita manasa shastaisu gandhara kushumar mala virachita dadao. Sukadev Goswami continued, O best of kings, having spoken these words, Sudama could understand what Krishna and Balaram wanted. Thus, with great pleasure, he presented them with garlands of fresh, fragrant flowers. So Sudama first asks, what service can I do? And then he understands, well, of course, what service can I do? I make garlands. The service I can do is to give Krishna garlands. So this is what we want to achieve. It's say one of the predominant messages of the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam, that we should give the Lord the best expression of ourself. That whatever is our nature, whatever is our tendency, whatever is our work, we should give that to Krishna in the best form possible. We should be the best expression of ourself in Krishna's service. Now, this applies, of course, ultimately, spiritually, that we each have a particular nature and service in our original spiritual body that we want to do for Krishna. But it also applies in this life. In our various lives, we may have different propensities and different natures and different jobs. Sometimes we may be a garland maker and sometimes we may be a king. But whatever we're doing in a particular life, whatever is our nature in that life, we are meant to offer that to Krishna. At the same time, there's a wonderful quote inside the room here about rejoicing in others' offering according to their nature. In other words, because I have a particular nature, it's not that everybody has to offer to Krishna according to my nature, that everybody should be like me. That wouldn't be a very functional world or a very pleasant world if we were all just copies of each other. But rather, Krishna loves variety. Just like there's some plants there in a pot, and you see even on the same plant, each leaf is different on the same plant. What to speak of various plants of the same variety? They're all a little different, right? We used to have those identical twins here, but still, they were each a little different. They had their different personalities. So our aim in studying today's verse is to meditate about how can I be the best version of myself in love for Krishna, and how can I rejoice in others doing that according to their own propensity. And imagine a world where everybody did that. Imagine a world where everybody understood their own nature, used that for Krishna, and rejoiced in, was happy for everybody else being so situated. Now, it's interesting that the garland maker would be in the varna of the artisans and the craftspersons, right? He's in the field of artistry. In our career dharma book, we call the four varnas the field of ideas, the field of government, the field of resources, and the field of artistry. And many times there's some casteism prejudice against people working in this field. But it's quite interesting because those who are in this field of artistry and craftsmanship, craftspersonship, their main dharma, their main value is to serve and please their customer. This really struck me one time when I was in St. Petersburg, staying at the home of some devotees. They were out of town. We never got to meet them. I heard he was the second best opera singer in the world. And on their walls, they had original oil paintings done by this one artist, Yugalapriti. And I was thinking about that, to paint pictures which then hang in someone else's house. You don't have the pictures hanging in your house. You might have a picture of your picture, but the actual picture is in someone else's house. And your pleasure is that someone else is enjoying your painting. And this mentality doesn't so much exist in the three other varnas. It's very strongly the value of this varna, of those in the field of artistry. And I've meditated on how this value is really the essence of bhakti. Like in text 48, he says, Bhritya, I am your servant. Ekala Ishwar Krishna Arasarva Bhritya. Everybody is a servant. And those who have a nature in this field, it's very easy for them to have this mentality of service, of getting their happiness from bringing happiness to others. It's sort of the essential dharma, the essential value of those in this field. Now, Krishna really emphasized that we should be serving him according to our talents and our nature, what gives us joy. And if you think about it, why does he emphasize this so much? When we're doing something that is our nature, that is our joy, that is our self, then the happiness we get from it is the happiness of being who we are. It's what they would call an intrinsic happiness. When we're doing what we love and what we're good at and what's the greatest expression of ourself, we're willing to do it even if people don't pay us for it. I mean, we might need to be paid because, we have to pay the bill, we have to pay our car insurance and stuff, so we may need to get money, but we're not doing it for the money. And as Krishna says, our nature can't be repressed. He said, you can't repress it. He tells Arjuna, either you're going to do your nature for me or you're going to do it for illusion, but you can't repress your nature. So we're going to do it anyway, whether or not anybody asks us, whether or not anybody pays us. That means we're getting joy from the thing itself. We're getting joy from being ourselves. It's interesting, Srila Prabhupada says, wanting to be ourselves is not a desire. You can't put that in the category of desire. Wanting to be what is. A desire is wanting to have something that you're not. Now, again, this is ultimately true spiritually, wanting to be our real self, wanting to serve Krishna as our real ultimate self. It's not considered a desire. But even in this life, with our false temporary self, wanting to be the genuine false temporary self in this life, if you forgive the oxymoron, is also not a desire. And then it's very easy to do detached work for Krishna. Because I'm not really attached to the externals. I'm not attached to the payment. I'm not attached to the accolades. Those things aren't what's motivating me. And therefore, to do work simply for Krishna's pleasure, to be who I am for Krishna's pleasure is very easy. Whereas if I do somebody else's work, I'm not enjoying the work itself. And therefore, I end up trying to find my satisfaction in the externals. People will say, I don't like what I do, but I need the money. And then doing detached work is very difficult because doing someone else's work by its very nature involves strong attachment. Therefore, Krishna says, bhayavaha, to do someone else's work, that work becomes a vehicle of fear. So when I joined the Hare Krishna movement, one of the things that I was immediately asked to do was to make garlands. I mean, when they asked me, what are you good at? I said, well, I was a state and district champion in public speaking and in debate, and I had a whole room of trophies and that, and all my friends became lawyers, and they said, sorry, we don't have any service like that for women in the Hare Krishna movement. So they said, why don't you make garlands? So the first garland I made, you were talking about how the garland was symmetrical, it was completely unsymmetrical. It was a mess. And the devotees came and said, you have to take that out and make a symmetrical garland. Right? So, as if you haven't noticed, I'm a bit of a rebel. So I was like, why do I have to make it symmetrical? Anyway, I did. And it was a regular service that I was doing. So I would go out to O'Hare Airport in Chicago and sell books. Sometimes I'd go one day to the airport and sell books, and the other day I would do things like wash the deities' plates and polish the silver with, those Saraswati Richardson, with her mother, Kalalapa. She and I were Brahmacharini buddies. So we would polish the silver together, and we would make the garlands. And then they had me sewing, which I'm completely useless at. I'm like 10 thumbs as a seamstress. But they had me sewing outfits for Kishore Kishori, right? So that was my main service. And later I took over the running the treasury when my husband had to do repairs on the building. Anyway, then gradually, thank you, Krishna, when we moved to Detroit. So then our GBC and the regional secretary and the town president, my husband, all said, really, Urmila, you should be preaching. You should become a preacher and a teacher. Thank you, Krishna. So with great trepidation, I entered back into the things of my nature. And then, as you all know, I gradually became a known preacher and a requested preacher. But as soon as you get to the front of the room, then people like to throw rotten fruit at you. It's like what they like to do with people at the front of the room, and I think especially when you're a woman at the front of the room. And I remember one time I was in Mumbai, and that became a little tiresome. I'm like, Krishna, why do I have to be at the front of the room as a preacher and a teacher? Why don't I just go back to making garlands? And so that was kind of I was thinking that every day for maybe a week or two while I was there. I was getting some treatment at Bhaktivedanta Hospital. I was right across the road from the Mirror Road, the old Mirror Road temple. So it was Balaram Purnima, Balaram's appearance day. And I went to the temple, and I saw that there were some ladies making garlands. And I thought, oh, here's my opportunity. I can make garlands. So I go up to one was the town president's wife, and then there were like maybe 3 older ladies. And I said, can I make garlands? And the older women were like, she's an American. She doesn't know how to make garlands. And the town president wife said, don't talk like that. She's a Prabhupada disciple. You're offending her. You have to let her make garlands. I was like, oh my God, Krishna. So I sit down there to make garlands, and they're showing me how they do it. And it's different than I learned. Like I would learn to take the needle and push it through the flower. But they were using the thread and tying it around the flowers. It was a different technique that I didn't know. So I watched them do it, and they're doing it very fast. So then I decide that I'm watching them, and I'm trying to do it. And the whole time I'm like sweating because some of these ladies are looking at me with, what do they call, like a stink eye? Like, is this white lady thinking she can make garlands? So I'm making this garland, and I'm like, get me out of here, get me out of here. The whole time I was in complete anxiety. Anyway, so I finish this garland, and I stand up, and the president's wife says, thank you, thank you. And as I walk away, I see one of the older ladies takes my garland and tears it to shreds. And I said, okay, Krishna, I get the message. I should be doing the work according to my nature. I shouldn't be trying to do someone else's work, even if it appears that it's more pleasing. And that was a big shifting point for me. That yes, Krishna says every work is covered with some kind of fault, but still we should do the work that's according to our nature, and that's how we should serve Krishna. Then we notice here that not only is the garland maker offering Krishna and Balaram garlands according to his occupation, but he also, as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, he offers an especially nice one to Krishna, kind of on the sly. He's giving Krishna and Balaram a garland, but he makes sure that Krishna gets the nicer garland. So I was really thinking about this and how not only do we each have our own individual nature, in each life we have a particular nature, and in our original body we have a particular nature, but we also have in our original spiritual form a particular proclivity for a particular form of the Lord. I mean, it's so individual. Krishna is such an individualist. There's a group of devotees that talk about radical personalism. Again, I mean, each leaf on a plant is different. Each snowflake is different. Who looks at every snowflake? But each snowflake is different. Each grain of sand, you can look up on the internet, magnified grains of sand. Each grain of sand is a work of art and is completely different from every other grain of sand. And Krishna also has Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam. That can mean his form is unlimited. Mother Yasoda can't tie him up because he has an unlimited form. But it also means that he has unlimited forms. The Acharyas explain that when he married 16,100 wives simultaneously, each form was slightly different. And my favorite explanation of this is when Lord Brahma steals the boys and the calves. And when he does so, the Lord expands as each boy and calf. Then when Lord Brahma comes back to see how Krishna managed without his friends and calves, they reveal themselves as Vishnu forms. And there Sanatana Goswami has a commentary where he talks about how each Vishnu form was being worshipped by unlimited numbers of living entities. And he says there that the Lord has unlimited qualities, and there are unlimited living entities, and each living entity is attracted by a particular quality of the Lord. Just like I have one devotee friend whose whole meditation is on Krishna's fragrance. Like here we see Sudama's giving flowers that are particularly fragrant, right? You talked about that the other day with flowers, how most modern flowers, they don't smell like much, right? Because you were saying how they breed them not to smell like much, because if they have much of a smell, the essential oils cause them to wilt faster. So they breed them for shipping and durability rather than fragrance. Like much of our food is like that, isn't it? Right? The food is bred so it can easily ripen off the tree and be shipped long distances without bruising rather than for nutrition. Anyway, so I have one friend, his whole meditation is on Krishna's and Radha's fragrance. That's all he meditates on. He's always sending me texts from the Shastra about the different parts of Krishna's form and the different fragrance of the different parts of Krishna's form and the different fragrances of different pastimes. And then he's always mixing different fragrances with various oils that then he gives to his local temple and other temples to be used in the worship of the Lord. And that's what he's meditating on. And we may each be attracted by different forms of the Lord. Just like it's explained that after Krishna and Balaram go to Mathura, later on, Balaram goes back and visits Vrindavan, and he dances with gopis. But they're different gopis. They're his gopis. Those are the gopis that are especially attracted to Balaram. So if there was a devotee like that in a florist shop, he'd be secretly giving Balaram a special garland instead of Krishna. Right? And then there are devotees who are particularly attracted to Krishna as a baby. There was one lady visiting the temple, day before yesterday. She was helping me with Tulsi, and she says, "Oh, I just love Krishna as a baby. Bala Krishna. I'm only interested in Krishna as a baby." So people are interested in Krishna like that. Rupa Goswami talks about how each of Krishna's ages is a stimulus for ecstatic love. But people in different moods are attracted by different ages. And some people are attracted by the Lord in Mathura. Some people are attracted by the Lord in Dwarka. Some people are attracted by Lord Ramachandra. Some people are attracted by Lakshman. Some people are attracted by the Lord in Vaikuntha. Some people are very attracted by Nrsingadev. I have one devotee friend who's really into Parasuram, which sort of like Parasuram. He's got all these pictures of Parasuram on his wall, and he's always talking about Parasuram's pastimes. So it's like, oh, okay. But that's the individuality of each devotee and particular pastimes. Srila Prabhupada says if we just meditate on one particular pastime, we can become perfect. So we each have our particular offerings to Krishna and the particular form and qualities of Krishna that we're attracted to. And Krishna perfectly reciprocates. Etamam prapantante tam sataiva bhajamya. He perfectly reciprocates. In this world, we want that to happen with other jivas, but it doesn't. You know, people get married and they want to make their spouse be the kind of person they want, and it doesn't work. But Krishna actually takes the form, Lord Kapila says, Krishna takes the form that the devotees want to worship him. He manifests himself like that. Now, we have a general problem in this world called Atmavan Manyate Jagat. I tend to see others like myself. I tend to project my own self onto others. And each of us tends to think that other people should be like ourselves. I remember, this is embarrassing, but I remember when I was a new Gurukul teacher that I thought that if I trained all the children in a particular way, then they would all become academically and intellectually like me. Because I thought, you know, I'm great. So everybody should be like me. As I say, it's embarrassing. But anyway, it's how I thought. And very quickly I learned that it didn't work. That rather my job as a teacher was to help each child discover their real nature and become the best version of themselves. So maybe we're not a garland maker. I mean, I do like to offer flowers to Krishna, and I do like to grow flowers and pick flowers to Krishna. But even if we're not a garland maker, we can certainly be appreciative of the garlands. And Rupa Goswami explains one of the udipana, one of the stimulus for ecstatic love, is Krishna's garland. And he talks about, this is from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. This is from the second ocean, the southern ocean, the first wave, which is about Vibhava. And this is in text 356. So there he mentions Krishna's different kinds of garlands, each of which can stimulate our own ecstatic love. So again, even if that's not our service, even if flower growing or flower picking or garland making is not our particular service, appreciating this service of others can inspire us in our service. Does that make sense to everybody? Oh, this person has made such a nice garland for Krishna. Let me paint the stairs nicely for Krishna. Oh, this person has made such a nice garland for Krishna. Let me also cook a nice offering for Krishna. Let me manage the finances nicely for Krishna. Let me iron the cloths nicely for Krishna. Let me iron the cloths for Krishna as nicely as this person made the garlands. Like that. And appreciating Krishna and the devotee's service. So let's look at these types of garlands. There's the Vaijayanti garland. So the Vaijayanti garland has 5 colors in it. So in my garland making days, we would usually probably have 2 or 3 colors. But the Vaijayanti garland has 5 colors, and it goes down to Krishna's knees. Then you have what's called the forest garland. The forest garland not only has flowers, but it also has leaves. Now, you want to make sure when you put leaves in a garland that they're very soft. Sometimes when you put leaves in, they can be stiffer And remember that Sudama offered a very soft garland to the Lord. And this garland goes down to his feet. We see some photographs of Srila Prabhupada, right, wearing a garland all the way down to his feet. And then you might think, well, how does Krishna walk around the forest and dance if he's got a garland down to his feet? But we have to remember that these garlands that Krishna wears in his eternal pastimes, they're not made out of dead flowers, right? Like this garland's probably a couple days old and everything's wilted. But when Krishna wears garlands, what is there around his garlands? What's hovering around Krishna's garlands? Bees. Now, bees don't hover around flowers like this. Bees hover around flowers that are still on the plant. So that means that the garlands that Krishna's wearing are still fresh as if they're on a plant. And actually, everything that Krishna wears is fully alive and conscious. It's a being. So it's not only that the garland maker is doing a service, the garland itself is doing a service. The garland itself is, I want to have the service of having Krishna wear me. I want to be on Krishna's body. Imagine what a nice service. You're sitting on Krishna's body. And so the garland, being a conscious living entity, it can move around with Krishna. It's not going to get in his way when he's dancing. In fact, the garland is part of the dance. Krishna's clothes, Krishna's garland, that Krishna's ornaments, all of them are also dancing with Krishna and moving with him. Like in a symphony orchestra where everything's playing together. Then we have some garlands not made out of flowers, but made out of jewels. Then there's the Vaikaka garland. Now this is worn horizontally across the chest. So it's instead of vertically hanging down, it's worn horizontally across the chest. Then there's the Apida garland. Now this is when Krishna has his hair in a top knot and there's a circle of flowers around the top knot. So I noticed the pujaris here, they often do things like that. They often make flower crowns for Srimati Radharani, and they often put flowers like that around Krishna. Then we have the Pralamba garland, which hangs straight from the throat. So I'm not sure exactly what that means and as far as with the other garlands. But certainly whenever we see Radha Goloka Nanda every day, whenever we see paintings of the deities, one of the things we can appreciate is the expertise of the garland makers. Right? So that garland there, that's hanging to Krishna's knees. I'm not sure how many colors are in that garland. Looks like only about 3. But we can recognize the expertise of the garland maker and appreciate the service that went into it, the care. We can appreciate the service of the flowers. I mean, even in this world, Prabhupada says that the plant from which the flowers are picked to make the garland gets spiritual benefit and gets to take birth next life as a human being with an opportunity for devotional service. So we get to appreciate that. And sometimes we get flowers for the deities from flower sellers who give us a discount, some special provision. We can appreciate their service, even if it's not our service. So we want to find what is the best expression of myself? What is it that I do naturally? Let me offer that to Krishna with full love and devotion. Let me nurture my own mood of love and devotion, and at the same time, deeply appreciate that others have other moods of devotion, and use my appreciation of others' moods to enthuse my own mood and my own bhakti. And if we have a society like this, everybody's happy. Imagine a society where everybody was like this. So questions, comments, additions, subtractions, chastisements? Yes, Maharaj. About to to kill Jayadratha, yes. Yes, yes. So would that be a matter of attachment? So you're talking about, Mars, for those of you listening on the internet, he's talking about how Arjuna was so upset when Abhimanyu was killed and he took a vow to kill Jayadratha. Wouldn't that be attachment? But that's his service. It's Arjuna's service to uphold religious principles in warfare. That's Leela, of course, where Krishna's saying to him, don't take these vows without asking me. And that's also an instruction for us, that we should not be taking vows like that without consulting with our spiritual master and senior devotees, that we should not act precipitously and thinking, well, Krishna's going to save me at the last minute by putting the sun behind the clouds. You know, that we should be very, very careful. Lord Nrsingadev says this to Lord Brahma also. Don't just give all these benedictions to demons without asking me. It would cause me trouble. Radha Golokananda ki.
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Enam Kanbanda Paravindalayatatam Bhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundaram Dandar Pakom Vidamaniyam Kishesha Shobha Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Ardhani Akasa Priya Priti Manti Vasyanti Nikayanti Niragatati Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Lala Vikrasya Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami 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 Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham
Tamaham Bhajami. Let's see. Nitai Padakamala Koti Chandra Sushitala Nitai Padakamala Koti Chandra Sushitala Ye Chaya Jagachurai Hey no Nitai Pine Pai Radha Krishna Pai Te Nai Kridakuri no Nitai Pai Say Sambandanahi Jah Richard Janma Gela Jah Say Pashu Barodura Jara Say Pashu Barodura Jara Nitai Napoli Lomuke Machilo Samsara Suke Vijakule Hikorit Betara Angara Bhattagoila Nitai Pada Pasharia Asachere Sachakuri Mangane Nitaye Karuna Hoebe Rache Radha Krishna Hoibe Daro Nitai Charana Jokane Nitya Charana Satya Dara Sevaka Nitya Nitya Pata Sada Koro Asha tama poro duki. Nitai more korosuki. Rakoranga charanera asha. Netai padakamala. Goti chandra sushi tala. Yechaya Jagachura. Jayarat Hagolokenanurad Hagolokenanurad. Jaya Radha Golokenana Radha Golokenana Radhe. Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe. Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe. Jaya Radhe Jaya Sri Radhe. Jayam Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Paravedikacharya. All Stutela Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace Sabaya Chandanana Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Kijai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Kijai. Anandakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Kijai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Kijai. Prem Se Go Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Kijai Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopinath Sai Mukunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Kijai Vrindavanam Kijai Machuradam Kijai Jagadada Sami Kijai Yamunamai Kijai Shimati Glasi Devi Kijai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Kijai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bo. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Namah Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste, Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Pacharni, Nivashesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Dejatarni. So we'll read the translation. In this material world which is progressing toward hell, there's always a blazing fire, and everyone is struggling hard without finding peace. Therefore, if the world wants to have peace, it should take shelter under the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, which are cooling like shining of millions of moons. Unless one takes shelter under the shade of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, it will be very difficult to approach Radha Krishna. Anyone who does not establish the relationship with Lord Nityananda is simply spoiling their boon of a human birth and the animal propensities of sense gratification. Never saying the names of Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya, they become absorbed in so-called material enjoyment, and their academic education and birth in a high family or great nation will not protect them at the time of death. They have become maddened by a false concept of bodily life, and thus they have forgotten their eternal relationship with Lord Nityananda. Such forgetful persons accept the illusory energy as factual. When you achieve the mercy of Lord Nityananda, then you will be able to approach Radha Krishna. Firmly catch hold of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. The lotus feet of Lord Nityananda are not illusion. They are a fact, and anyone who engages in the transcendental loving service of Lord Nityananda immediately achieves their transcendental position on the spiritual platform, which is eternal and blissful. Therefore, always try to catch the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. Narottam Thakur says, "My dear Lord Nityananda, I am very unhappy, and so I am praying to you to make me happy. Please keep me in a corner of your lotus feet." Jai. Narottam Thakur ki jai. All right, Shikshashtaka. Cheto Darpanamarjanam Bhava Mahatvagni Nirvapanam Shreya Kaira Vichandita Vicharidam Vijavrati Jivanam. Raga Chunadapi Suvichena. Janmani Janmani Swadare Babajad Bhaktir Hai Chiki Chiwaye